結ぶのインターフェース進化のスピード世代が移りゆく真から何のその私が主役でよろしく未来をロードするメモリ不足のご愛嬌突き破れレプテには守りたい解き放つ想いのかけらレプテには何度でも輝く君の笑顔と共にアリッシュ次元を超えて響き合うミッション翼を重ねて
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another What I Review. If you're not familiar with What I Review, it's a series in which I find interesting games, or like games interesting, or games that come out. Personally, games I personally find interesting and want to cover myself. I know, what's going on? 2 reviews in the span of a week? Holy hell. Yeah, I've kind of been anticipating this for months now. So I actually was and was not prepared for this. I was prepared because I knew when it was coming out. The problem was, Idea Factory didn't have a release time. So this kind of popped up on Steam yesterday, late in the afternoon, and I was not prepared. Bugger. But I was planning on getting the review out yesterday. I do apologise. Something came up. Something as in my problems started coming back. If you've watched my latest videos or seen what I've said on Twitter, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But I will not dawdle on that because you've probably heard enough of it already. I'm not surprised really. But welcome to What I Review, and today we will my What I Review is Hyperdimension Rebirth 3. Funny story this. I've actually played this on the Vita. And there's going to be a couple of warnings I'm going to have to throw out beforehand, and that is, for starters, I've already beaten this, not on PC, on Vita, so I may let out some story spoilers. Just a warning there. I will say when I'm about to spoil some of it, but I have already beaten this. I beat it a couple of weeks back, in fact, so yeah, and I swear, I think I reviewed this early this year. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about when we get into it. Anyway, some by the guys over at Idea Factory and Complie Heart, I'm guessing, if I remember correctly. Idea Factory and Complie Heart. What is it? It is a JRPG, of course. How have you not covered that? I think it's kind of obvious, really. Anyway, first things first, as I always do, I tend to go through options menu for these types of games just so I can point at the developers and tell them where they've gone wrong. Of course, I always do that. First thing, sound. Separate audio sliders. Good. Very, very good. They don't save though. I've had to close the game multiple times and reopened it, and they've all been always resetted, which is irritating. Not inverted, holy hell. I will show off the voice acting later on. Of course. I'll have to probably do an edit, so yeah. So, sound, audio sliders, good, separate audio sliders. Menu, of course, put that to fast. Different options there. Now, again, back to the creme de la creme. I love pointing this out the most. Options menu, video options, or shall I say graphical options. Again, very, very, very bare minimum. Which, I reviewed the second game when that came to PC, and it was practically the same options menu. And if you are wondering, yes, this goes all the way up to 1920 by 1080. It does run in 1080p, which is good. But again, bare minimal options. See, the problem is, like, ever since I played the PC version of Zestiria last week, and I reviewed that, and seeing how good the options menu was for that, I'm kind of expecting JRPGs to actually, excuse me, I'm actually expecting JRPGs to put that little more effort in now, after seeing what Bandai Namco did with Zestiria. with that options menu, because that was a good options menu, a very good options menu in fact. But again, you do have, you can either play with mouse and keyboard or Xbox controller, and that's where one of the problems already arises. It is so obvious that this was meant to be played with an Xbox controller for multiple reasons. A, controller remapping. As you can see, there's all your buttons. When I booted this up for the first time earlier on, no keyboard controls. Where's my mouse? If you look down here where it says all these buttons down here, those were not in keyboard controls. In fact, the game doesn't really tell you keyboard controls. Weirdly enough though, the menus are mouse driven, so the fact that they're not giving keyboard prompts is a bit weird. Not just that, but I did plug in a keyboard. No, I did not plug in a keyboard, it's already plugged in. I did plug in my Xbox controller earlier on today. Couldn't find it for some reason. So anybody else who's having problems with the controller working, I got two solutions. Verify the game's cache, or go to the set launcher options and type down, fuck, I forget that key. It's next to the 0. I always forget that key. It's next to the 0. Type that and then type controller support, all one word. After I did those two things, it picked up my controller instantly. So I can definitely give you 2 pieces of help there if you need it. But again, it seems like it's just telling you to play with an Xbox controller because there are no keyboard prompts whatsoever. But it's weird that it almost couldn't pick up my controller whatsoever, which was baffling. Don't know, but so options menu, it's good that they've got separate audio sliders, but graphical settings, Zesta has set a very high bar now. Bandai have set a very high bar with that now, with the options menu for JRPGs. I think you're going to have to try and beat that. Honestly, I'll put at least some effort in, but we'll go into that when we get into it, because I get the feeling this is going to be very easy to review, because frankly, I already reviewed this. No, not this game in particular, but the second game months and months ago, and well, I'm not going to spoil it, but you'll see exactly what I mean when we get into it. And now here we go. Welcome to the world of quote-unquote game industry, which even to this day makes me laugh hysterically because of how bloody funny it is. Oh god, you're gonna notice that things look a little bit different. Allow me to show you. Stop it, mouse. Please don't start talking. Yes, you notice that the word looks a little bit different from last time. It's not just because of a shift. Let me just go here so the talking don't start. It's mostly to do with the fact, now I'm going to briefly just summarize the story a little bit. Just a little bit, because I don't want to go into too much. And I would like to also point out that this is very early on in the game, so you don't have to worry about actual like visual spoilers and shit. I will have to show off the dialogue though, so then maybe I'll have to probably do story spoilers for that. Don't know, but according to this, it's basically 1980, where cassette tapes and the old wooden box game console bollocks is still a thing, which is funny to me because if you're an old gamer, yeah, it's bloody hilarious. Anyway, so that's just the premise. Alternate. Right, let me just stop for a second. Yes, I will speak spoilers now. I'm going to give you a brief spoiler right now, so you've got fair warning to mute the video right now. Okay, if you haven't muted it, then that's your fault. Basically what this is the story is basically an alternate dimension, is what it is. You're in an alternate dimension that is in the 1980s, basically. And I think it's blatantly obvious who basically you get sent to an alternate dimension that's in 1980, where things are obviously very very far behind, as you would imagine, because like I said, cassette tapes and shit are still the rage. Discs haven't even been invented yet, so yeah. And basically, again, spoiler warning, the person who did it is kind of the person who's going to cause everything. Who's going to cause all the problems, shall we say. Okay, to the people who muted, you can kind of unmute now. But to be honest, if you've muted it, fuck me, I'm an idiot. Probably put something on the screen. So yeah, that's kind of the premise. Like, I find it difficult to think how can the guys at Idea Factory or Complie Heart, how can they keep thinking up of this stuff, really? Because they could do literally so much with a story that revolves around basically taking the piss out of the game industry. Which, I think there's just, they've got material there. They've got material for decades with that, so... But again, I know it looks very similar, doesn't it? It looks very similar to the two previous games. That's because it kind of is. I mean, the whole everything you did in the first two does kind of follow on into this, so bear that in mind. But everything about it, like even game mechanics as well. I mean, you've still got the standard shop, still got guilds. So yeah, ooh, but oh, chapter specific. Okay, do that. You can tell because it has that chapter icon next to it. So you still got all the guild stuff. You still got the disc development, which involves getting a disc, getting a, I'm guessing a processing chip, and this is one of the features, which I'll briefly go over because if you saw my last one, this will be very familiar. Basically, you get a disc, an empty disc. You find these chips. I'm guessing they're processor chips. And then you just equip them. Pre-order campaign. Fuck's sake. Increases the odds of escaping from battle. Yeah, that's funny. And basically, you put the idea chips into the slots, you burn the disc, and the disc gets created. And with that disc then, you equip that disc onto a character because of its stat boosts that you put on it. And you can actually reformat and change everything around and do all that stuff, which is nice. Small little stat boosts. Which are nice. Always nice to have small little stat boosts. Information. It is recommended that you actually, every time you progress through the story, it is recommended to get information. You get a bit of dialogue. Sometimes you get some cutscenes. You know, just some side stuff, basically filler stuff. And obviously museum, which you can practically guess what that is. So it's yeah. It's still the similar premise to all the others, basically. Now I'm gonna go through the fucking combat because there is a couple of things that are different. Well, when I say a couple of things, I mean one or two. I think that much is obvious. Oh god, I got so much to fucking go through. Items, self-explanatory. You played any JRPG, you practically know what all this is, basically. If you've played any JRPG or any kind of RPG, really, you should be familiar with what all this is. Oh god. Equipment. We'll go into equipment because there's, again, something like that. I did just get a disc. So I'll show you disc. Disc, like I said, burn disc. The buffs are at the bottom. So defense and higher chance of escape, equip, and then that's going to be useful. It's always recommended that you burn every empty disc that you have. Even though people nowadays don't burn discs. We're in that digital age now where it's just one thing after another. Now, skills. Here we go. This is going to get complicated. Not that complicated, but a little bit complicated. You have your basic combo skills, you have SP skills, you have EX Drive. EX Drive is kind of basically specials. That's all I can say about that. It's just, yeah, as I said, I'm very early in the game, so I don't have any. Bollocks, I should have thought about that. SP skills, obviously special skills, that's obviously what it stands for. They consume SP, every character has their own unique one, and they either are damage focused or support focused. It's always best to actually use these as best as you can. You might as well, because, well, I'll show you that in combat. And then, the combo skills. Now this looks a bit daunting, doesn't it? Yes. Bollocks to that. Basically what it is every tier has its own specific, well, let's say rule set. for each category has its own specific role, shall we say. You have Rush, which is focused on... excuse my throat, still feeling under the weather. You have Rush, which is focused purely on building the SP gauge. And that SP gauge is what is under your character's health. What allows you to do EX finishes and what allows you to do the SP skills. That is focused on building that up. Power, you can practically guess what that is. It's focused on dealing damage. And then you have Break, which is focused on guard breaking, which is very, very highly recommended, because you break the enemy's guard, you do more damage. It's as simple as that. And you can practically put as much as you want into them, as long as that, you see the CP gauge up here? Right there? That's total, and that's how much you have left. You can practically fit as much as you want on here, just as long as you have some to spare. And as you can see, it's obvious that you go for the best ones as you progress and level up, so on and so forth. And you basically just equip the best ones, basically. I mean, that's kind of rudimentary. And then you have EX finishes, which are... after you finish an entire combo, which is usually a 4-hit combo, you can unlock the 5th with plans, and I fucking kid you not, a crafting system. And if you have at least the specified amount of SP, which it will say there, you can execute that at the end of your attack. And again, every single one has their own one. Like I have one there, equip that. Luckily, EX finishes do not take up CP, which is beneficial. Have you got all that? I mean, it's not really that complicated. You just pick the most powerfulest ones, and that's it. I mean, as you can see, you don't have enough CP for that, but if I go to that, I can add on that. The reason why I can do that is because it's going to take the place of that. So it's basically going to take about 12 off of the original gauge, putting it down to 10. You see how it works? It's not complicated. But I do kind of like the combat, like this whole combo building sort of thing. I wish more games would have that. A lot of JRPGs do actually have that, but not that many of them allow you to actually go into greater depth, really. So it is nice, and you can actually just mix it up and just add as many as you want, as long as you've got CP to spare. Yes, right, party, as you can guess, rudimentary, swapping out, simple as that. But the game has a coupling system just similar to the other two, I think. Yes, I'm sure similar to the other two, where if you have some characters on the bench, you can put them as a couple, and they grant buffs based on the Lily rank, which I will show you that in a minute. The buffs down here, as you can see, grant buffs to a specific character that they are tied to. Now the Lily rank is... if you're coupled with a specific character, you can build the Lily rank up if you basically use the both of them enough, like together, and that'll basically level it up and get obviously bigger. Formation, this is nice. Basically you can edit the formation where the characters stand within the battlefield, and I love the fact it's not presets. It's not like, oh, you have to go for these presets. I'm looking at you, Agarest, for doing that. It's like you can literally move them around within the entirety of the area, so you can position them all very carefully. So the strategy, nice, like that. What else? Status, I think that's rudimentary what that is. As you saw with the whole quest thing, you do get your quests. You can complete them however you want, honestly. The only purpose I see for doing quests is to get cash, you gotta get me that money, and items. Because once you do a quest, you can practically grind that quest over and over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah, pretty much. And of course, quests that you've done. But you can practically just grind them over and over and over again. Now, plans. This is where the crafting comes into it, because rule the fucking day that a JRPG has fucking crafting in it. Yeah, seems that the whole crafting thing, you can't escape it. Anyway, basically what it is Each category has their own specific things. If you get the right amount of items, you can get buffs, basically. Some of them are buffs, so you can get something like Fortify the enemies, which will basically make the enemies a hell of a lot tougher, or if you want to just blast through the game, you can weaken the enemies. Which is, again, one of those things. Don't know what that is, but you see what I mean. You get literal crafting system, where you can craft plans that kind of change the game, that add items. Basically, they're kind of like mutators that you can add to the game to kind of mix it up and change it round, shall we say. Change the whole, like, every dungeon around like that. We can change it round to change all the materials that were in it and change the enemies. I don't know, like, it's crafting. It's like, what can you, like, can you actually go wrong with a crafting system? I mean, really, it's just, it's crafting. It's not really all I can say about that, because apparently every game needs to have crafting nowadays. Now, I think this is the newest feature. I don't remember it being in Rebirth 2. No, I'm 100% sure it wasn't in Rebirth 2. Basically, you have a dungeon. How many floors are to that dungeon? No idea. But each floor, each area has about 100 floors, shall we say, give or take? About 100 floors? Yeah, about 100 floors. That take about, varied in time. Take about 10 seconds every floor. And what this will allow you to do is it gives you more material, basically. It gives you the chance to acquire more material, acquire new drops, and, you know, shit like that. So it's nice, because you can just select it, click it, and then you can just, thanks for that, then you can just go about playing the game, and then it'll be done. And I think you don't even have to be playing the game. I think, if I'm 100% sure about this, you don't even have to be playing the game for it to move along. It just does it on its own tone, on its own accord. So, I don't know, that's kind of nice. Pedia, pretty rudimentary and pretty standard. So that's the menus. Not really that complicated, is it? No. Yes, and you're probably thinking, that seems like a hell of a lot of characters for the beginning of the game. Well, because this is JRPG, it comes bundled with DLC. In fact, the game actually comes with an abundance of DLC. That's already on the game. That's already with the game. So you get like an absolute crap ton of DLC. One of those DLCs is characters from the last game. So I don't like JRPGs that are easy. I like JRPGs that give me a challenge. Them doing that has made the beginning of the game so easy. Ridiculously easy, in fact. Can be a problem. Definitely a problem, but... And, yeah, so, understandably, what do you expect? Now, if I were to go back to the story here for a second, if you're probably wondering, how long is the story, give or take? For me, it took several months. Well, that was on the Vita, so... But, if I were to say, I'd personally say it's about 30, maybe 40 plus hours it took for me. So it's that's, as you can see, that was me taking my time with the game. I'm pretty sure if you were to blast through the game, you'd probably get through it a lot quicker, but give or take about 30-40 hours. Side quests? No, there's not really side quests. If you count the jobs that you can get at the bulletin board as side quests, then sure. But honestly, you can do them whenever you want. And I don't really think the side quests themselves have any actual effect. I mean, I asked this about the second game, which was the shares. And my question has always been, do they actually do anything? Because I haven't noticed them do anything. Don't know. I'm guessing there's some they might do, but I honestly couldn't figure it out. But other than, like, there's not really any kind of side missions per se. It's just the main story with some side quests to do to get some shit on the side. Which, I don't know, it's not bad. Now, the dungeons. Because you probably want... Because this technically does have dungeons. What are the dungeons like? This is a map of the dungeon. Of course, it's a dungeon. You're probably thinking, is it that big? No, of course it's not that big. Why would it be that big? It's not that big. problem with the dungeons is they are very small. In fact, they are very small. I'll show you a previous dungeon and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Your average dungeon size. They're not big. The dungeons themselves, I'm going to call them dungeons because that's technically what they are. They are not big. I mean, that icon there proceeds to the next level, but honestly, it's just... These are the size of the dungeons. They are incredibly small. Which is a bit of an annoyance because I like dungeons that have depth and some level of complexity to them, giving you the opportunity to explore them and find stuff. With the size of these dungeons, they are not that big, but to be honest, I don't think that's going to be a defining feature. There are some dungeons throughout the game that do have some level of complexity to them. But all in all, they just kind of look like this, where they're just small, with very little room for exploration. It's like, they're designed for you to grind and just to progress, and that's it. Whatever. I don't know if, again, if you've never played one of these games before, it's just like, this franchise just absolutely loves taking the piss out of the game industry. I mean, obviously. It loves just poking fun at everything game industry related, all the new news and shit like that. I mean, for fuck's sake, in the beginning of the game they talk about the fucking Oculus Rift. Literally, the Oculus Rift. They don't call it the Oculus Rift, but it's the Oculus Rift. I can't remember what they call it. It was something gift or something like that. And not to mention, they also love to poke fun at... It loves to poke fun at anime in general, pointing out tropes and cliches, which I find laughable, because it's so true. But back to that point, it wasn't just the fact that they pointed out the Oculus Rift. The quote-unquote... Oh, I remember what it was called. It's called the Nebulous Gift. Yeah, that doesn't sound like Oculus Rift in the slightest. It's not just the fact that it was the Oculus Rift. It's the fact that it looked like the fucking nerve gear. Literally the nerve gear from Sword Art. Not even joking about that. It looks almost identical to the nerve gear. In fact, at the very beginning of the game, I don't want to spoil it, but I'm going to spoil it. There are some serious references to Sword Art in there, which I don't know if I should be happy about that or quite annoyed about that, because people know... I'm not going to go into that. But yeah, the game loves poking fun at just everything game industry related. Everything that's going on within game industry. Even poking fun at games themselves. Anime and the tropes and the cliches. It loves poking fun at just everything. And constantly breaks the fourth wall. And just loves to reference everything it possibly can. To some people, that might be a turn off. Because not many people like the fact that it's just that it's just reference after reference after reference and not actual comedy, as some people would say. But there is a form of comedy in references if it's done correctly. Looking at you, Duke Nukem. If it has context to the references, then it makes it then it's funny. But if you're not into that kind of comedy, then you're going to be disappointed because there's a lot of fourth wall breaking and there's a lot of references and poking fun at different industries. But I find it bloody hilarious. I mean, for fuck's sake, as I mentioned before, all of the nations are named after games consoles. The 4 characters are named after... like, they're related to their respective consoles. You got Xbox, you got PlayStation, you got Nintendo, you've got... I don't know what that console is. I think it's Sega related. Apparently it was a cancelled console from years ago. And it's just they all wear the colours representing those consoles. It's... Can you not see what I'm talking about here? But that is generally what you're going to be getting yourself into. Now, besides that, there's one thing I may have avoided a little bit. Stop. Does the game... What is the frame rate of the game? Because I'm guessing a lot of PC elitists are probably foaming at the mouths right now because I've been avoiding that. Surprise, surprise, the game runs at 60. That's not even a joke, because I will be uploading this in 60 just to prove to you. And I mean, look, it runs at 60. It literally runs at 60, which, if I remember correctly, the second game, I don't remember. Did that actually run at 60? I don't remember that running at 60. But if it didn't, and this does, then Idea Factory, you've done a good job over there, guys. Or Complie Heart, you've done a very good job over there. I always say 60 is better. 60 is always better. Now, I'm gonna show you combat. Combat time! Basically, you have free movement around, don't engage combat. What you can do is, you can do stuff similar to what I showed you last week in Zestiria, but this has kind of more of a meaning than that did. You can engage an enemy by walking into them, by attacking them, or letting them attack you. If you just walk up to them normally, engage the battle normally. If you let the enemy take you from behind, they will get the advantage and they will get to move first. If you attack them first, you get the advantage. Like that. Now, again, some things may seem very similar to the previous two games because they basically haven't changed the bloody thing. They kind of remind me of From Software. But at the same time, if you can do something really well, you might as well stick with it. If there's one thing you're good at, then stick with it, you know? But it seems like Idea Factory are very good at this, and they really don't want to move away from it. So it is turn-based combat, which may put a lot of people off. You have an area, the whole ring here that you see. The fuck was that? Was that? Look at those Minecraft graphics. Okay. Fucking hell, that's pixelated as fuck. You have this whole area here that you can freely move around in as much as you want. Literally, there's no restrictions. You have your SP skills, which I showed you before, no skills. You have your EX drive, same thing. You have attack and defend, switch over. You have awaken, switch, item, and escape. Escape only works if you're doing something, I don't know, because the weirdest part is the escape is one of the features of the game in the combat that sometimes does not want to work. Don't know why. But yes, you know what the SP skill does. The EX drive is what you'd expect it to do. Obviously, attack and defend, again, you'd expect them to do. Awakened is kind of the alternative to what the... You could say that's kind of the improvement that they made. Basically, characters that cannot go HDD have the ability to do Awakened, which is kind of a similar premise, just not as strong. Switch is basically, if you have a character as a coupling, you can switch that character. It will consume your turn, however, items and escape are what you'd expect. Fuck, that was a mouthful. But yeah, you have free movement to completely move around the arena for as long as you want. And obviously, the square in front of you comes down to your equipment, basically. The equipment that you have can actually, well, basically the weapon that you have can actually change the area for which you attack in. Different weapons have different effects and different areas that you can attack with it. Fortunately, I'm not within range, so defend. You can, as I said, you can literally move around in the whole area, but there are some that can actually attack far outside the area. Now, obviously, you initiate an attack by literally attacking. Boom. Now, everything I showed you in the combo menu is you like to proceed onwards here. Like I said, you can focus on filling up your SP gauge. Where's my mouse? Which is that greenish turquoise bar right there. Rush helps fill that up. Power deals damage. Break focuses on getting rid of the enemy's guard. Since these are weak, I'm not even going to bother wasting my time trying to get rid of their SP gauge. We will get to the voice acting later on. Now, as you can see, the weapon. Look at the weapon. It's a big weapon. Very large weapon. It's a fucking bastard sword. It literally is a bastard sword. You see the area for which that can attack in, which is bizarre why it attacks like that. Now, as I mentioned with the EX gauge, when you finish off a combo, you can choose between 3. Y, X, and A. And as I said, depending on your SP gauge, you can use it as much as you want, basically. Improvement over the second game, and I think the first game. In the second game, you had a bar that filled up. Let me just whack him. You had a gauge that filled up. Yes. You had a gauge at the beginning of every dungeon when you enter the dungeon, and you'd basically fill that gauge by doing battles, attacking enemy, and of course getting attacked. And when that gauge filled up would allow you to use the EX finishers. Every time you left the dungeon is when it would empty again. I hated that system because it restricted the combat. I love how they've actually tied the EX finishers to the character's special bars. Boom, easy as that. I like how they've tied the EX finishers to the special gauge instead of it being its own separate gauge that fills up at complete bloody random. Okay, so combat is what you'd expect, but you can take it in two different ways. You can take it to either be fast-paced or you can take it to be strategic. It's kind of a bit of both, really, but more or less on the strategy, more like it. It's more like it, but yeah. I'm going to be suicidal and show off a bit more of the combat by taking on this big motherfucker. Did I just get a fucking trophy? Did that appear on the fucking recording? No, it didn't. Good. Sorry about that. So I'll show you the Awakened. Basically, you press Awakened. Well, Awakened does not consume your turn, which is good. Glad that isn't a fucking thing. And it's slow, okay. And like I said, Awakened tends to buff your attacks basically on how much damage, defense, and stuff like that. Now we get to the creme de la creme again, the second creme de la creme, which is again talking about fucking computers here. CPU characters can do this. That was a frame rate drop and a half. Holy hell! Weird frame rate drops then. Basically, CPU characters can activate HDD form. No, HDD does not stand for hard disk drive. And yeah, just don't start with me on that. Basically, you consume about, I think, is it 10% of your SP gauge to do that, and basically you might as well do it because there's no time limit, and it buffs your attacks and it buffs your defense. Quite largely, in fact. God, there's some weird frame rate drops with that. Have I mentioned how I want more sadistic characters in a game? Coming from somebody who's a little bit sadistic, I'm really not surprised. But yeah, so it's what you'd expect it to be because it's it does require like some levels of strategy, as it gives you that whole area to move around in. And the one thing I have learnt from playing is to not bundle the characters together. Move the characters around the battlefield. Trust me when I say this. It is not a stupid thing to say, it is the best thing to do. Move the characters around the battlefield. Position them carefully, so basically you're using them as they should be used, basically, to their respected fighting style, shall we say. I shall show you a skill. Again, you have normal attacks and you have buffs. You can guess what they do. They're attacks and buffs. What do you expect? Yes, SP attacks tend to do a great amount of damage. Obviously they would. It's kind of obvious, really. But yeah, like, I said this about... I think I said that about Rebirth 2, and that how the combat definitely... I like the combat system within this because it feels smooth. I mean, especially the fact that the game is running at 60. I mean, since the game is running at 60 frames per second, the combat feels a lot faster and a lot smoother. I mean, hell, I played this on the PS Vita and the frame rate was fucking terrible. Honestly, like, the frame rate was really bad. But it's nice to see that the frame rate is 100% stable. There are occasional frame drops, as you saw, but those only ever happen during when the game's trying to transition from one scene to another. It never actually happens during the actual free movement and shit. That's not a mouthful. So that's basically combat system, is what you'd expect, and I do like the combat system within this. I mentioned this about the second game, and it does feel smooth, especially because it's running at 60. And I like it. It's definitely nice. I mean, you can consider it to be fast-paced, you can consider it to be a bit more strategy-focused. Take your pick. Right. Right, as a... just to avoid any kind of story spoilers, I decided to boot this up, reload a previous save file from the very beginning of the game, just to give you a general idea of the voice acting. I will be swapping the voice, like the languages over between English and Japanese to give you a general idea of what I'm talking about. But, well, fuck, it's inverted again. But I'll give you a brief example of what the voice acting sounds like.
と言われちゃ答えてあげよう。プラネテューヌの守護女神ネプテューヌ参上。守護女神？私の大切なゲームを壊した犯人はあなただね。絶対に許さないんだから。
You know, I just want to break this for a second. The fact that that says Mean Bean Machine just keeps bringing me back to thinking about Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. If you've never played that, go fucking play that. Sorry to break that all of a sudden, because that's just that dialogue. Told you, that dialogue. So as you can probably tell, as I've said this before, the Japanese voice acting is really good. I've always credited them for that. They're very good. Now, has the voice acting improved? The English voice acting in particular, because I did have a small little nitpick with that. I don't know if it was just me, but it kind of, the English voice acting kind of sounds a bit iffy to me. No pun intended. Let me just show you exactly what I mean.
Keep destroying, servants. Excellent response. At this rate, my objective will soon be achieved. I found you, virus leader thing. I'm not gonna let you bug up my awesome game a second longer. Who's there? Ask, and now shall receive it. I am the guardian CPU of Planetoon, known as Neptune. Prepare thyself. Ah! A CPU! You're the mean bean machine that screwed up my beloved game. Forgiveness is all sold out today. Why is a CPU in this place? We're inside of a game right now. When you leave something to a girl like me, who makes the impossible possible, doing this was a cinch. Pretty sure Nepgear was the one who made the impossible possible.
I'd just like to point this out to all the people who are thinking, I've heard that voice before. Yes, that is the same voice actress who does Chie in Persona 4. I am 100% sure. And to the people who doubt that, go look. I swear to God that has to be.
What a blunder on my part. To think I allowed a CPU to get inside of a game like this. Ugh. Even if my foe is a CPU, you are alone. Servants, gather! Kill her by overwhelming her! Just as expected from a virus. Attacking me with numbers, huh? Goodness! What should we do? Neptune, will you be okay?
Yeah! No matter how many there are, they're junk compared to a CPU. I'm gonna reformat their hard drives. Come at me.
So there. Please stop. Please. Voice acting, personally, I don't know. I just prefer it like the Japanese over the English. It's not that the English voice acting is bad. Not being nasty. It's this thing where it's like some of the voices do not fit the characters. That's kind of what I'm saying. Is that some of the voices kind of don't fit the characters. I'm not saying that the voice actors are bad. I'm just saying some of the voices don't fit. Some of them do, but not a lot. But some of them don't. But I do consider the voice acting to be good. I mean, the writing is fucking brilliant, honestly. If you've not seen the writing in these games, they're the best. They're just so funny. But, like, in general, like, these are the sort of games that you could basically say are kind of for... Could you say that they're for a niche audience? Nah, not really. I mean, it like I said, it does poke fun at the game industry and video games in general, but I can guess, because like the main reason I never, like it took me a while to get into franchises, because I originally considered it to be a little bit too cutesy at first. I think it was just mostly the art style, but once I got into it, like, yeah. Which, moving on to the art style, again, Idea Factory and Complie Heart have outdone themselves again. Like, the art style, I said this about the second game, and I'll continue to say this about the rest of them. Whoever does the fucking artwork on these games, they're amazing. Like, whoever does the artwork of, like, the character designs, whoever, they're fucking amazing. Incredibly well drawn with a mixture of vibrant colours and such attention to detail. It's brilliant. But I will say though, if I were to say the environment themselves, like the dungeons, do have a fair amount of low res textures and so on and so forth, but again, what can I say? It's like, they could do some work on the texturing a little bit and maybe some graphical options, but again, I will continue to say this till the day I fucking die, is the character designs are amazingly done, and whoever does them, you do an amazing job. So that's definitely something. But conclusion, because we're at that point, because if I check my notes, because believe it or not, I've actually started writing review notes now, because I have a habit of forgetting to discuss things. I've practically discussed everything. You know, the combat is exactly what you'd expect. It's similar to the previous games, the previous two Rebirth games. Hardly anything has changed. It's still the same. The dialogue, as you can admit, like, it's just ridiculous, but it's the good kind of ridiculous, where it's just silly and kind of funny. Again, if that's not your type of comedy, because it is very self-referential and referencing video games, games themselves, and so on and so forth. If you're not into that kind of comedy, then you're going to be disappointed, because that's all it is, because it's even fourth wall breaking as hell. Yes, the game does run at 60 frames per second, 1080p. There are occasional frame drops when the game is transitioning from one scene to another, but other than that, the game runs perfectly fine. As I said, visually, like I said, the character designs are top-notch, they are incredibly well done. Scenery could do with a bit of work though, with the texturing. Dungeons, too small. Wish they were bigger, to allow a bit more exploration and like some things to do. The story itself, like I said, it took me about 30 to 40 hours to finish the story, and it's kind of blatantly obvious who the final boss is going to be and like how it's going to end up. But it's not just the beginning and the end that's the important parts of the story, it's everything in between. Because you can't just go from the beginning and jump straight to the end, you have to build it up. And that's kind of the important parts, and yeah, it does build it up fairly well. Even though there are some key points that they do forget to mention. But yeah, like, again, it's another this seems to be the pinnacle of what Idea Factory can do. Like, this is their franchise, this is their staple that they can do, and that they can do really well. And it's not from a lack of, like, they push out a Hyperdimension game, like, a lot. I mean, this is, I think this is like the third one this year. This is literally the third one. I mean, we had Rebirth 2 early this year on PC. And then there was Action Unleashed, and then there's this. They have pushed like 3 games out this year. This is their franchise. You can honestly tell that this is their franchise, and it's something they enjoy making. Because you can just see it. You can see it in the way the game is made, the way it's designed, and you can see it in just every aspect of the game, that this is something that they really enjoy making. And honestly, I have to say, I enjoy fucking playing them. Like, these are one of those games that is just... I haven't had this much fun in a video game with a video game franchise in quite a long time, where it's just constantly making me smile and laugh constantly. But yeah, I can definitely say that, yes, it is practically the same as its predecessors with very, very minor changes, but it's more stable on PC compared to its Vita version. The Vita version has a horrendous frame rate. But it definitely functions on PC. But yeah, I can definitely give it a recommendation, definitely. It is on sale right now for £13, whatever that is in your regional equivalent. Knowing Idea Factory, they always put their games on sale every time they release it, so it's on sale right now till I think the 6th of November, so it's on sale till then for I think about half price or something like that, 50%, I'm not sure. So I can definitely say pick it up. I mean, there are people who can say that this is just more of the same, which technically isn't a bad thing. It's not always a bad thing, but yeah, there's very little things have changed, there's very little things they've innovated on, but again, not every game needs innovation to be good. Sometimes if you stick to what you know and stick to what you're good at, you can do that for ages. But regardless, it gets a recommendation from me. I definitely like it, and I'm pretty sure you definitely enjoy it, because when I played this through, I fucking pissed myself laughing multiple times. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I've been whoever the fuck I am, or whoever the fuck I've been. This has been a fucking roller coaster in taking the absolute tiddlywinks out of everything game industry related, and so on and so forth. But yeah, that's what it does, that's what it's best at. But regardless, thank you very much for watching, and ta-ra.